Welcome back to Have More Babies. This is the show where we take the sources you share with us and, well, we try to turn them into synthesized, actionable knowledge for you.
That's the goal.
Today, we're embarking on really a deep dive into one of the most critical public health issues affecting kids everywhere: malnutrition.
Yeah, and it's often really misunderstood.
Exactly. Our source material for this one is a pretty comprehensive guide on child nutrition. It comes from Omega Pediatrics, and it specifically looks at how these challenges show up in communities like Roswell, Alpharetta, and Milton.
Right, specific communities, but the principles, they apply much more broadly.
The guide calls malnutrition a silent epidemic, which is a powerful phrase. So our mission today is to kind of pull back the curtain on that idea and maybe highlight something genuinely surprising. Malnutrition isn't just about kids not getting enough food. It's actually an umbrella term. It covers two problems that seem like polar opposites.
That's the core of it, really.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Usually we hear malnutrition and we think, starvation, not enough resources, simple lack.
Yeah, the classic image.
But this guide's definition, it suggests something much, much broader.
It does, and that's a key distinction we need to make right off the bat. If you look at the clinical definition they provide, malnutrition is basically a condition that results from an imbalance.
It's imbalance.
Yeah, an imbalance of the essential nutrients that kids need for, well, optimal health and growth. It's all about that balance, or sometimes the serious lack of it, that defines the illness.
Okay, so it's a balance that matters.
Precisely. And that imbalance, it splits malnutrition into two really dramatic phases. The first one is the one everybody sort of immediately recognizes: undernutrition.
Right. The traditional view.
Exactly. And it shows up in generally three specific ways. There's stunting. That's when a child has reduced height for their age. Then wasting, which is low weight for their height. And also severe micronutrient deficiencies. Lack of essential vitamins and minerals.
Okay, that makes sense. That fits the standard picture. But then here comes the paradox, right?
Here comes.
The complete opposite condition, getting too much of the wrong things, that still falls under the same umbrella term: malnutrition.
That's overnutrition. And it's typically characterized by a child being clinically overweight or even obese.
And this is especially relevant when you think about, the health profiles in more affluent areas like the ones the guide mentions: Roswell, Alpharetta.
Absolutely. It's a major issue there. And what's really fascinating, or maybe concerning, is realizing how a child can technically be overfed, right? Consuming plenty of calories every single day.
Getting enough energy, technically.
Yes, sufficient energy intake, but still be deeply malnourished at the same time. They're missing those critical vitamins, minerals, proteins needed for brain development, immune function, bone growth, you name it.
That's not just about the amount of food.
Not at all. It's about the quality of the nutrient profile within that food. That's the guiding principle here.
That dichotomy, it just immediately raises the question: how on earth do you treat these conditions when their causes are so incredibly different? One seems like a problem of scarcity, the other a problem of, overwhelm or abundance.
That's the million-dollar question in pediatric nutrition right now.
Let's maybe trace that back. What does the guide say about the specific causes for each type?
Okay, let's start with undernutrition. The causes here tend to be systemic, often rooted in resource scarcity, external pressures, that sort of thing.
Right.
The source lists four main drivers, but we should look a bit beyond the obvious ones. I mean, of course, poverty is huge.
The biggest one, probably.
Often, yes, because it directly limits access to high-quality, nutrient-dense foods. Families might be forced to rely on cheap, high-calorie staples just to feel full.
Which leads back to that energy abundance but nutrient deficit you mentioned.
Exactly. Plenty of calories, not enough actual nutrition. But beyond poverty, there are a couple of less visible factors that really compound the problem. One is simply a lack of knowledge. The guide calls it parental ignorance, which sounds harsh, but it means a lack of understanding about, say, age-appropriate portion sizes or what a truly balanced diet looks like for a growing child.
So parents might think they're doing okay, but they're missing key elements.
Precisely. And the other factor is the cruel cycle of disease. Chronic illnesses, especially things like persistent diarrhea or recurrent infections, they prevent the body from properly absorbing nutrients.
So even if the child eats well.
Even if they eat a perfectly healthy meal, their body just can't utilize the goodness inside it. It's heartbreaking.
And that connects directly to the environment, doesn't it? The guide mentions environmental factors.
Absolutely. Poor sanitation, lack of clean drinking water. These things fuel that disease cycle we just talked about,
Wow.
which then worsens the nutrient absorption problem. It becomes this vicious, interconnected web that's really hard to break out of.
Okay, now let's pivot. Compare that picture to the causes listed for overnutrition. It's like a mirror image reflecting completely different societal challenges.
It really is a staggering contrast. The causes for overnutrition are generally tied more to abundance, modern lifestyle choices, that kind of environment.
So first up is probably the obvious one, the sheer availability of high-caloric foods.
Everywhere.
Fast food, prepackaged snacks, sugary drinks. They're often the easiest, cheapest, and most accessible options, especially for busy families.
Convenience often trumps nutrition, unfortunately, and this gets compounded by the sedentary lifestyle.
Less running around outside.
Way less. Increased screen time, maybe longer school hours sitting at desks, perhaps fewer safe places in the community for kids just to play freely. The energy intake just vastly exceeds the energy expenditure day after day.
Yeah. But the cause that really jumped out at me from the guide, especially thinking about those high-pressure communities like Roswell and Alpharetta, was the mention of psychological factors.
Ah, yes, that's increasingly recognized as a major driver.
This is about emotional eating, isn't it? Often triggered by stress or anxiety, maybe even trauma.
Yeah.
Kids using food, especially comfort food, as a way to cope.
Exactly. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it really explains why simply telling a family, oh, just eat less, is rarely a solution for overnutrition.
It doesn't address the root cause.
Not at all. If the root cause is behavioral, say, a child turning to food to manage stress from intense academic pressure or maybe family turmoil, the intervention has to start with psychology.
Right.
And this really highlights the complexity of public health today, doesn't it? Fighting nutritional illness means we have to address resource scarcity in one population and potentially mental health and behavioral patterns in another, under the same umbrella term.
So understanding the cause is absolutely critical because it dictates the fix. But before we get to treatment strategies, we need to talk about recognition. How does a parent or even a pediatrician actually spot the signs that a child might be dealing with one of these malnutrition issues before it gets really chronic?
That's crucial early identification.
For undernutrition, I imagine some signs are quite visible, like stunted growth.
Devastatingly visible, yes. A clear failure to track along expected height percentiles on the growth chart. That's a major red flag.
But what about the less obvious signs?
Those often hit the child's quality of life almost immediately. Things like chronic fatigue. This isn't just being tired, it's a persistent exhaustion that sleep doesn't seem to fix.
Wow.
And, critically important, impaired immunity. The body just doesn't have the building blocks, the proteins, the vitamins, the minerals to create effective antibodies.
Meaning they get sick more often?
Much more often. And the illnesses tend to linger longer. Frequent colds, infections that just won't clear up. That can be a sign of underlying undernutrition.
Okay. Now, what about the signs for overnutrition? Are they just about weight?
Well, obviously, excessive weight gain beyond the typical norms for their age and height is the most visible sign. But the source material rightly emphasizes the more serious physiological complications that often accompany it. We're seeing conditions in kids that used to be considered adult-onset diseases.
Like what?
Like high blood pressure. Finding hypertension in a pediatric checkup was highly unusual years ago, but it's becoming more common.
That's alarming.
It is, and perhaps one of the most serious non-visible symptoms the guide mentions are respiratory issues, specifically pointing out obstructive sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea in a child.
Yes. The realization that a child's weight status might be causing them to literally struggle to breathe properly while sleeping, that's a powerful indicator of how severe this can be.
And that must affect everything else.
Absolutely. Sleep apnea disrupts growth hormone release. It impacts learning, concentration, daytime energy levels. It creates this downward spiraling effect.
So if a parent sees some of these signs or is just worried, what happens next? The diagnosis sounds like it needs to be really thorough, not just stepping on a scale.
Oh, absolutely not. The diagnosis isn't a single number. It's a proper investigation. The guide lists the standard steps, a full physical examination, taking a detailed dietary history, running blood tests to check specific nutrient levels, and yes, doing a BMI assessment to determine weight status relative to age and sex.
Okay.
But the key takeaway for you, the listener, isn't just that list of tests. It's understanding the multifaceted necessity of the assessment.
Meaning you need all the pieces.
You need all the pieces. Providers have to correlate the physical signs, like growth patterns or blood pressure, with laboratory evidence, are there actual vitamin deficiencies, and with a really detailed history of eating behaviors, activity levels, even environmental stressors at home or school.
Because the malnutrition could be masking something else.
Precisely. It could be masking an underlying disease or significant behavioral issues or environmental factors. You need that comprehensive approach to figure out the true root cause before you can treat it effectively.
Okay, so that detailed diagnosis then points the way to the treatment strategies. And this is where that divergence between the two faces of malnutrition becomes crystal clear, right?
Absolutely. The paths are completely different.
For undernutrition, the approach sounds like it's focused on carefully rebuilding and replenishing.
That's right. It often involves serious dietary modifications, working with a nutritionist or dietitian to ensure the child gets specific, nutrient-dense foods tailored to their deficiencies.
Not just more food, but the right food.
The right food. Alongside that, targeted supplementation is often necessary, prescribing specific vitamins or minerals where blood tests show clear deficiencies. And really foundational is health education for the parents or caregivers, giving them the knowledge and skills to understand nutritional needs and sustain those dietary changes long term.
Okay, that makes sense for undernutrition, adding what's missing, educating.
Yeah.
But the strategy for overnutrition, that it sounds like a completely different battle.
It is. We're generally not adding things here. We're adjusting entire lifestyles and, crucially, addressing those behavioral drivers we talked about.
So what does that look like?
Well, it requires highly specialized dietary counseling. This goes way beyond just handing out a diet sheet. It's about helping the family understand food choices, portion control, reading labels, making healthier swaps.
Optical skills.
Very practical. And this is almost always combined with structured and ideally enjoyable physical activity programs, finding ways to get the child moving that they actually like doing.
Yeah, making it fun is key.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But this brings us back to that critical psychological piece for overnutrition.
Right, the emotional eating component.
The guide is very clear on this. Behavioral therapy should often be considered a core component of treatment for overnutrition.
So talking to a therapist or counselor.
Exactly. Having trained professionals work with the child, and often the whole family, to address those underlying emotional triggers. Learning stress management techniques, improving family communication dynamics, finding healthier coping mechanisms than turning to food.
That seems vital, especially in those high-stress environments.
It's critical because without tackling that psychological root, any dietary changes or exercise plans are much less likely to stick in the long run. The behavior patterns will likely reemerge under stress.
So treatment is incredibly tailored depending on the type of malnutrition.
Absolutely. One size definitely does not fit all.
Which means prevention must also be tailored, right? Or are there common strategies?
While success against malnutrition, regardless of which type you're talking about, really hinges on being proactive. Prevention requires ongoing systemic effort. The guide seems to emphasize three main pillars for this.
Okay, what are they?
First, education. But not just general advice. It's about empowering every parent with precise, evidence-based knowledge about balanced diets, age-appropriate feeding practices, understanding growth charts, starting right from infancy.
Getting that foundational knowledge out there.
Exactly. Second, making sure problems are caught early. This means regular checkups are absolutely essential.
Not skipping those well-child visits.
Definitely not. Those visits are crucial for continuously monitoring growth curves, spotting early signs of stunting or excessive weight gain, maybe doing screening questionnaires or tests for nutrient levels before a minor imbalance becomes a chronic, damaging condition.
Catching it early makes treatment easier.
Much easier and prevents long-term consequences. And the third pillar is the need for a systemic safety net. Community programs.
What kind of programs?
These can be initiatives run by government agencies, nonprofits, even local pediatric practices like Omega. Things that provide resources, support groups, access to affordable fresh food like WIC or SNFP, perhaps subsidized counseling for families who need it.
So individual effort needs community support.
It does. So what does this all mean for you, listening? I think the big takeaway is that really fighting malnutrition successfully demands a multi-pronged strategy. You have to address diet, physical activity, psychology, and the surrounding environment, often all at the same time.
That dual nature of the problem.
Yeah.
You know, where not having enough resources and having too much of the wrong resources can both be equally dangerous threats.
Yeah.
That feels like the central insight here.
I agree.
Whether the specific challenge is stunting from deficiency or high blood pressure from excess, the ultimate goal is the same: helping kids achieve genuine nutritional balance for healthy growth and development.
Well said. And look, if you were seeking really comprehensive guidance on things like acute pediatric care or preventative strategies, or you need direct access to resources about child nutrition and health, especially if you're in those areas I mentioned like Roswell, Alpharetta, Milton, we strongly urge you to visit omegapediatrics.com. They're the ones who put together these crucial guides, and their website is a fantastic resource for families trying to navigate these complex challenges.
Okay, that's omegapediatrics.com, a great primary resource.
Definitely.
And of course, if you found this deep dive useful today, if you feel a bit more informed about the complexities of child malnutrition, please do show your support. You know, the drill liking this video really helps us out. Subscribing to the channel means you won't miss our future breakdowns on important topics like this. And please share this information. Share it with another parent, a caregiver, anyone who needs to understand the dual nature of this silent epidemic.
Absolutely. And before we sign off, maybe one final thought to leave everyone with. A provocative question, perhaps?
Go for it.
Given this clear link that the guide points out between childhood overnutrition and, the documented rise in psychological stress, anxiety, even trauma in kids, how much of the long-term fight against childhood obesity, especially in high-resource areas, is actually about treating parental stress and societal mental health issues, rather than just focusing solely on counting calories for the child?
Wow, that's a really big question, tying kids' nutrition back to adult and societal mental wellness.
Something to chew on, maybe, as you go about your week.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this important deep dive today.
My pleasure. Goodbye for now, everyone.